Hello, welcome to Guidance Post. I am M. Everett K., your host, and today I want to introduce you to the integration ladder. This is kind of a new concept that I've developed alongside the floor ladder, turning revelation into your new normal, like how to integrate information. Because knowing can make you feel expanded, right? You get an insight and you're like, wow, that's really cool. It's kind of opened my perspective. I see something differently now. And revelation of that insight is the next step where you see that insight and you're like, wow, I see this and I see how it can apply to my life, specifically to me. This is amazing. I have a new point of view. All right. So that can make you feel expanded, make you feel more aware, make you feel more confident. But integration of that knowledge makes you live differently. And that difference matters because many people confuse the emotional charge of recognition with actual transformation. They hear something, read something, or receive something, some new insight, and it really hits home. Like I said, wow, that's me. I need to share this. And maybe it is really powerful. Maybe it is really effective. Maybe it names the wound. Maybe it names their pattern. Maybe it opens a locked door inside their mind. And that is beautiful. That is wonderful. That's part of what the awareness and awakening process is, right? But seeing the door is not the same thing as walking through it. Recognition says, I see it now. But integration asks, how do I live differently because I see it? And that is where the insight stops being entertainment and now becomes work, unfortunately. Because the deeper question after any revelation is not, do I understand this? The deeper question is, now that I know this, what am I responsible for changing in my own life? That is the part we often avoid. Not because we're lazy or because we're false, not because we are insincere, but because sincerity does not automatically create transformation. A lot of people become collectors of insight. They collect quotes, method, explanations, spiritual language, nervous system language, all the different types of language and systems and processes that could be helpful to them, that they feel, yes, this sounds like a really good thing that I should do. I'm glad I have this information. And that's kind of where it stops. But sometimes naming things matters. But naming the wound is not the same thing as healing it, right? Understanding the pattern is not the same thing as interrupting that pattern. Knowing the path is not the same thing as walking it. Some people collect insights the way other collectors collect books they never read. They like having them nearby because it makes them feel closer to the change that's contained within those books. But proximity to wisdom is not the same thing as embodying that wisdom. This is where the old phrase, knowledge is power, needs to be corrected, in my opinion. Knowledge by itself is not power. Integrated knowledge is power. Knowledge informs the mind. Integrated knowledge reforms the self. Because a person can know exactly what is wrong and still keep repeating it. Hello, they can know the diet that would help them and still eat against it. They can know the need to exercise and still avoid movement. They can know the relationship is unhealthy and still return to it. They can know the old habit is destructive and still leave a private, secret doorway open to it whenever they need secret release. The knowing may be real, but if the behavior does not change, the knowledge has not yet become integrated. The knowledge is still in the mental library. It may be labeled, it may be highlighted, maybe even quoted and shared, but it is not embodied. This is where we want mental magic. Mental magic says, I know it, I believe it, therefore it should automatically change me, right? But most of our deepest patterns did not come through one thought. They formed through repetition, repeated choices, repeated chosen comforts, repeated escapes, repeated reactions, and repeated hooks to that old identity. So they usually have to be changed through repetition as well. The insight may arrive instantly. The embodiment usually does not. Mental magic wants transformation to happen at the speed of recognition. Integration happens at the speed of repetition. And that is why a revelation can feel true and still not change your life. The revelation itself did not fail. It simply reached the limit of what knowing can do by itself. Revelation is the spark. Integration is the fire of discipline. Behavior is the evidence. So the question then becomes, what behavior would prove I am integrating this? And then, what is my next true move? Not the whole life overhaul, not the fantasy version of discipline, not the perfect plan you abandoned by Thursday. Just the next repeated behavior that teaches your system. This is who we are now. Because the self is not rebuilt by admiration. The self is rebuilt by repeated evidence. Every time the old pattern appears and you choose differently, you are teaching your system a new normal. That is integration. Not knowing more, living differently. Again and again and again until your behavior catches up with your revelation. And that is the purpose of the integration ladder. Your nervous system changes through repeated pauses. You can get a quick answer about an old habit, but your identity changes through repeatedly choosing the new life instead of revisiting the old one. And this is not punishment. This is not shame. It is not a white-knuckled self-hatred pretending to be discipline, but it is repetition. The new behavior practiced until the nervous system begins to believe, oh, this is who we are now. This is what we do. And that is integration. And that is why the integration ladder matters. The integration ladder is not another piece of information to collect. It is a way to turn information into a new behavior. It takes one revelation and asks, what does this require of me now? Not someday, not when motivation arrives, not when the perfect plan appears. Now, just one revelation, one personal impact, one behavior change, one next true move, one repeated identity practice. Because the self is not built by admiration, as I said. It is rebuilt by repeated evidence. Every time the old pattern appears and you choose differently, you are teaching your system this is who we are now. Eventually, the new behavior stops feeling like a performance. It becomes normal. And that is the goal. Not to prove that you are in control for a week, not to stop a habit for a month so you can say, see, it does not own me, and then quickly reopen the door because now you have proven your point. That is still organizing your freedom around the cage. Or some people say you're just rearranging the furniture inside the prison. Real freedom is different. Real freedom is a habit that when thought or urge arises, you can acknowledge it without obeying it. You can say, I no longer want to do that. That is not part of our life anymore. And then the urge passes. Maybe quickly, maybe after a little bit of more noise and static, maybe after the old self knocks on the door with a clipboard and several dramatic arguments of why you should do that thing you're trying not to do. But maybe another wobble is intensifying that old habit. Maybe it's hunger, tiredness, loneliness, your emotional aching, disconnection, overstimulation. The habit may only be the solution trying to answer a deeper need within you. So the work then becomes, it's not simply do not do this habit. The work is, what is this urge pointing toward? And that is the integration, not suppression, not shame, not spiritual performance, but leadership of yourself. You are no longer asking the old pattern to run your life. You're asking what the old pattern was trying to soothe and then choosing a truer response. The integration ladder gives us a way to do that. It turns revelation into application. It turns insight into practice. It turns knowledge into lived power. Because the point is not always to find a new truth. Sometimes the next step is to practice the truth you already found again and again and again until your behavior catches up with your revelation. And then keep repeating it until your identity no longer recognizes the old pattern as home. So that brings us to the integration ladder. 5 parts, 5 rungs, just like the floor ladder. Step 1 in this one is name the revelation. Start with the thing you learned. Not everything you've learned, just one thing. One thing that really sparked, one thing that you said, yes, this is for me. This is what I can apply to better my life. This matters because insight can become foggy when we try to carry too much at once. We hear one sentence that opens a door, and suddenly the original revelation gets buried under more commentary. So begin simply. Ask, what did I actually learn? In examples, I learned that protein matters for maintaining muscle as I age. Or I learned that walking after meals may support better blood sugar regulation. I learned that strength training matters more than just trying to lose weight. I learned that my urge to return to an old habit is often connected to loneliness or stress. I learned that I do not need to hold pain to prove that I was hurt. I learned that I keep waiting for the quick fix instead of practicing the next true move. The first step is to name the revelation clearly enough that it can be used. A vague insight creates vague change. A clear revelation can become a clear practice. Do not overcomplicate it. Write the sentence, name the thing, and put the map on the table. All right, step 2, narrow the personal impact. Once the revelation is named, the next question is not, is this true? The next question is, where does this apply to my real life right now? This is a step where insight stops being general wisdom and starts becoming personal responsibility. And that's the part we'd like to avoid, right? Because it is easy to agree with an idea from a distance. Yes, people should eat better. Yes, people should move their bodies. Yes, people should have boundaries. Yes, people should stop repeating old destructive patterns. Yes, people should stop looking for quick fixes. That's wonderful, but bring it closer. Where are you doing the opposite of what you know now? What are you doing that the revelation has exposed in you? Not as an accusation, as orientation. Examples of this would be, I know protein matters, but most mornings I eat mostly carbs and call that breakfast. I know movement helps, but I keep waiting to feel motivated before I start exercising. I know I want better health, but I still buy the foods I say I am trying to stop eating. I know I am no longer the person who holds pain to prove I was hurt, but I still replay old conversations like I am presenting evidence in court. I know this old habit is not part of the life I want, but I keep a private doorway open to it as a means to escape and comfort. So this step exposes the gap between knowledge and your behavior. And that gap is not there to shame you. It is there to show you where the work begins. So the question is, where is this revelation asking for an adjustment in me? And that is the personal impact. That part 3, define the behavior change. This is the most important step because this is where many insights quietly die. They stay beautiful, they stay meaningful, they stay emotionally true, but they never become behavior. So step 3 asks, what behavior would prove I am integrating this new knowledge, this new insight, this new revelation? Not what do I understand? What would prove it? What would someone be able to see? What would change in your daily routines? What would you do differently when the old pattern appears? Examples of this, if the revelation is about diet, the behavior might be, I eat 25 to 30 grams of protein with breakfast. I replace sweetened drinks with water or unsweetened tea during the workday. I stop buying the snack I keep saying I do not want to keep eating. If the revelation is about exercise, the behavior might be, I walk for 10 minutes after dinner. I put my shoes and workout clothes where I can see them before I go to bed, so they're right there when I wake up to remind me this is the new us, we need to do this. If the revelation is about emotional healing, the behavior might be, when the old pain rises, I pause instead of replaying the case and reliving the experience. When I feel activated, I ask, is this a threat or is this just a wobble? When I want to explain myself to someone who can't really hear what I'm trying to say, I return to sovereign neutral instead of entering the courtroom again and trying to over-explain myself to someone who is not listening to begin with. If the revelation is about habit change, the behavior might be, when the urge appears, I say, that is not part of our life anymore, and then I check for the wobble underneath it. This questioning step matters because the body does not integrate concepts. The body integrates repeated behavior. A concept may inspire you, a repeated behavior trains you. So define the behavior, make it visible, make it simple, make it repeatable. If it is too large, shrink it. The point is not to impress the fantasy version of yourself. The point is to give your actual life something it can do, simply and repeatably. Step 4, choose the next true move. This is where the ladder protects you from the trap of dramatic overcorrection. The mind loves to run revelation into a full renovation project, right? Your full renovation of your internal status. You learn one thing about nutrition and suddenly you are planning a complete life reset with color-coded containers, new cookware, a supplement schedule, a walking plan, a strength plan, a sleep plan, and a heroic grocery list that assumes a person with no emotional resistance and unlimited counter space will be taking over your life tomorrow morning, right? But that person does not exist, at least not yet. So the ladder asks for the next true move, not the whole transformation, not the end process. Again, the ladder is your next step to that end goal. So you ask yourself, what is the smallest real action I can take that proves I am no longer just collecting this insight? Examples: tomorrow morning I will add eggs or Greek yogurt to breakfast. Tonight after dinner, I will walk for 10 minutes. This week, I will do one strength routine, not 5 imaginary ones. The next time the urge appears, I will pause and ask if I am hungry, if I'm tired, if I'm lonely, if I'm stressed, or emotionally activated. The next true move should be small enough to do and meaningful enough to count. Tiny actions are not meaningless when they are aligned. A true single move interrupts the old identity. It helps tell the system, we are not waiting for the quick fix. We are practicing the new way. And that is the key. That is the progress. It's not perfection, but it is progress. And then step 5, the final step, repeat until it becomes the new identity. This is the golden ticket right here. And it requires the most amount of work, obviously. But you repeat it until your behavior catches up with your revelation. And then keep repeating it until your identity no longer recognizes the old pattern as normal or as a home state. This is where integration becomes real. Not because you understood something once, not because you had one inspired day, not because you stopped a habit for a week and proved that you could stop it for a week, but because the new behavior was repeated enough times that it became normal. This step is especially important with habits or bad habits because there is a difference between temporary abstinence and identity level release. Temporary abstinence says, I am not doing this right now to prove it does not control me, right? To prove that I am in control and I can stop at any time I want, and I'll prove it to you and I'll prove it to myself. So you do for a week or two. But identity level release says, this is not part of who I am becoming. Temporary abstinence may still keep the old habit available as a reward, as comfort, as a test, or as a future option. Like we're setting it down for now, but we're not giving it up. We're still going to keep it around because we like it, we want it, we think we need it. It's something my old identity keeps pulling me towards, keeps pulling me back to. But identity level release removes that reserved seat for that old pattern, that old habit. That does not mean the thought never arises again. But freedom is not when the urge never appears. Freedom is when the urge appears and no longer becomes a command for you to follow. The old pattern may knock at the door. The new identity does not have to answer. You can acknowledge it and say, I no longer want to do that. That is not part of our life anymore. And it's easy to say and harder to actually do and maintain. But when you do that, you will create that pause and you will awaken yourself to where it's not automatic that you do that thing, to where you're like, no, this is something we want to do, meaning moving forward away from this bad habit that you know that you shouldn't be doing. And that's not repression. That is leadership, self-leadership. And if the urge persists, use the ladder underneath that ladder, right? Ask, do I really want to do this thing? Is it really the thing itself that I desire, that I want to do? Or is this a wobble looking for relief through that mechanism? Am I really tired? Am I really just hungry? Am I really just lonely? Am I stressed? Am I emotionally activated? Whatever it may be, find out the root of what you're actually feeling. Most of the time when I feel these pulls back to old habits and old situations, it's usually now, recently, it's like I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm bored, I need to do something else. Because when you're idle and you're just kind of in kind of like a low zone mentally or physically, that's when these the old thoughts and stuff seem to arise more strongly because you're at your weakest. So they're like, hey, now's our chance to get back in there. We want control again. Now you are not fighting the habit when you ask these questions. You are listening for the need beneath it. And that is a different kind of freedom, because now the old habit is no longer the only tool available to you. You can feed hunger. You can rest tiredness. You can contact someone if you're lonely. You can move through boredom. You can regulate your stress. You can sit with emotional ache without turning it into a command. And that is integration. The old self does not disappear because you insulted it hard enough or you berated yourself long enough. The old self fades because the new self keeps showing up in spite of the old self. Again and again and again, until the old response stops feeling like home and the new response of the new you, the new identity, takes over, and you don't even do that anymore. You don't skip the breakfast, you don't skip the workouts, you don't keep going back to those old pulls for those old habits. I'll give you some more examples of this to kind of solidify the integration ladder. So everyday example will be for the diet. We'll stick with that one. A lot of people have troubles with that. So step one, the revelation. I learned that protein matters for maintaining muscle and supporting my body as I age. That's your revelation. That's your insight. The personal impact. I often eat a breakfast that does not give my body enough protein. Then I feel hungry or unstable later. So that was part two. Part three, the behavior change. Now, what will you do? I will include a clear protein source with breakfast. Extra move, tomorrow I will eat eggs or Greek yogurt with breakfast before 8 and then follow through on that. Then step 5, repeat into your identity. I repeat this until I am no longer a person trying to add protein. I'm a person who feeds my body with intention in the morning. So you're no longer saying, I am trying to add more protein. You're someone who just does it. This is what I do. I'll tell you about it, but I'm not telling you I'm trying to do it anymore. Okay, another example would be exercise. The revelation, I learned that strength and mobility require repeated movement, not just good intentions. And that's a hard one for me to swallow, right? I have good intentions. I should just have a better body that moves freely. That's not how things work. All right, part two would be the personal impact of that. I keep waiting to feel motivated, and while I wait, nothing changes. In fact, it may get worse, right? And then part three, the behavior change for this one. I will walk after dinner and do a simple strength routine twice a week. Those are simple enough goals, attainable. Next true move, tonight, I will walk for 10 minutes after dinner. Maybe I'll drag someone with me, make it something that we both do now. That's even better. And then repeat it until it becomes your new identity. I repeat this until movement is not a project I'm trying to start, and it is part of who I am. And I'll give you one more example, a habit change. The revelation would be, I learned that stopping a habit temporarily is not the same as removing it from my identity. The personal impact would be, I have sometimes stopped a habit to prove it does not control me, then return to it once I felt back in control, right? Once I proved to myself that it doesn't control me and I can choose to do it whenever I want, but then you go back to it a few days, a few months, a few weeks later, whatever it may be, and you're still the same old person. It's like, yes, you stopped it, but did you really? No, you went back to it. So the behavior change would be when the urge now appears, I will not treat it as a command to do the thing. I will acknowledge it and check for the wobble underneath it. What's making me want to do this? Because I've had it in my mind. I haven't done it in a while. It's not really something I have the urge to do as much because I'm working against that. I don't want to do these things anymore. But when it comes up, why is it coming up? Is there something beneath it that's like, because you're tired, because you're lonely, because you're depressed? This is the avenue that the old self wants you to take. Let's go back to what we used to do, right? The next true move for that would be the next time the urge appears, I will say, that is not a part of our life anymore, and mean it. Like, truly, I don't want to do this anymore. That's not part of who I am anymore. Then ask whether, if you're tired, hungry, bored, stressed, what's bringing this on now? If that's not part of you, why does it keep nagging at you to go back to it, right? And then solve that problem. And then maybe it's just take a nap. Maybe it's go for a walk. Maybe it's call somebody, all right? And then the last part 5, repeat it until it's your new identity, right? I repeat this until the old habit no longer has a reserved seat in my life. So the final lesson is the revelation does not equal transformation. The revelation is a doorway. Integration is walking through that doorway. One choice, one pause, one behavior, one next true move, one repetition at a time towards the new you. Knowledge is not power. Integrated knowledge is the real power. Because revelation gives you information, but repetition turns it into your new reality, into your new identity. And behavior proves whether the new self actually has entered the room. So thank you very much for being here today. If this helped you at all and you want to go deeper into these types of things, especially if you want some specific guidance for you specifically on different aspects of your life that you may be struggling with, emotional releases or attachments, or just an identity shift that you're struggling with, please check out the website, phoenix-oracle.com, and the link is in the description below, and I will see you soon. Thank you.